Hello, and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. We are on episode 203, and we're going to be talking about some more Queen Victoria's children. I do believe this is the seventh of her children. Lord knows this lady kept reproducing children left and right for crying out loud. But if you're new here, hit that like button, ring that bell for notifications. Also, please subscribe, help a girl out. I know the last episode was very short and sweet, and I do apologize for that profusely. I really do. So don't hate. Please don't hate. Um, but today we're going to be talking about Prince Arthur. Um, and he was the seventh child, and he was the third son of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert of Saxe Coburg and Gotha. And he was born at Buckingham Palace May 1st, 1850. I also, before I go on, hit that like button, ring that bell for notifications. I don't know if I told y'all that yet, but we're just going to go ahead and put it out there in case I didn't. Now, um, what was I doing? Now, it was reported that he became the Queen's favorite child. Now, let's talk about his military career. Um, at an early age, he would develop an interest in the army, and in 1866, he was allowed to go through military ambitions by enrolling in the Royal Military Academy, Woolwich, and where he graduated 2 years later, and he was commissioned as a lieutenant in the Corps of the Royal Engineers of June 18, 1868. He would transfer to the Royal Regiment of Artillery November 2nd, 1868, and on August 2nd, 1869, the Rifle Brigade, his father's own regiment, and after which he pursued a long and distinguished career in the Army, where officers including services in South Africa, Canada in 1869, Ireland, Egypt in 1862, and India from 1886 to 1890. In Canada, he was an officer with the Montreal detachment of the Rifles Brigade. He undertook a year's training and engaged in defending the Dominion from the Fenians' raids. And there was initially concern of his personal involvement with Canada's defense might put the prince in danger from Fenians and supporters in the U.S. But it was decided his military duty came first. Now, following his arrival in Halifax, Arthur toured the country for 8 weeks, made a visit in January 1870 into Washington, D.C. This is where he would meet President Ulysses S. Grant, and during his services to Canada, he was entertained by Canadian society, among others. He also attended an investigative ceremony in Montreal, and he was a guest at balls and gardens parties, and attended the opening of Parliament in Ottawa, all of which he was documented in photographs, and which were sent back to the Queen to view. However, Arthur was not engaged in social or state functions. On May 25th, 1870, he was engaged in defending the Fenian invaders during the Battle of Astley's Hill, in which he received a Fenian medal. Now, he made an impression on many in Canada, and he was given on October 1st, 1869, the title of Chief of the Six Nations by the Iroquois of the Grand River Reserve in Ontario. In the name Kava Code, um, enabling him to sit in the tribe's council to vote on matters in the tribe's government. As he became the 51st chief of council, he was appointed. Um, his appointment broke centuries old traditions, and there should only be 50 chiefs in the Six Nations. Of the prince, Lady Liskeard, wife of the then Governor General of Canada, Lord Liskeard, noted that in a letter to Queen Victoria that Canadians seemed to have hope that Prince Arthur would one day return as a Governor General. Arthur was promoted to an honorary rank of colonel June 14, 1871, a substantive lieutenant and colonel in 1876, and on May 29, 1880, and on April 1st, just 13 years later, he was made general. He gained military experience as a commander-in-chief of the Bombay Army in December 1886 and March 1890. He went on to the general officer in commanding Southern District of Portsmouth in September 1890. Now, the prince was hoped to succeed his first cousin once removed, the elderly Prince George, Duke of Cambridge, a commander in chief of the forces, upon his latter forced retirement in 1895, but his desire was denied by to Arthur, and he was given between 1863 and 1898 command of the Aldershot District Command. He was appointed colonel in chief of the rifle brigades in 1880. Um, in no, the sixth, the Dragons in 1897, and the honorary colonel of the third battalions, the Queen's Own Regiment in 1884. Now, in 1889, the 6th Battalion, Rifles and Canadians of non-Parliament active militia, located in Vancouver, asked Prince Arthur to give his name to the regiment and act as its honorary colonel. Now, the regiment simply has been converted to an infantry role for the 2nd Battalion, the 5th British Columbia Regiment of the Canadian Artillery, while with the Prince's agreement when the unit named and everything. Now, on his mom's birthday, he created a royal peerage entitled as the Duke of Connaught, Stratham, and Earl of Sussex. Some years later, he came to a direct line of succession to the Duchy of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha in Germany. Upon the death in 1899 of his nephew, Prince Alfred of Edinburgh, the only son of his brother, Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh. Now, he decided, however, to renounce his own and his succession rights to the duchy, which was then passed to his other nephew, Prince Charles Edward, the posthumous son of Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany. So, at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, on March 13, 1879, Arthur would marry Prince Louise Margaret of Prussia, the daughter of Prince Frederick Charles and a great niece of the German Emperor Arthur's godfather, Wilhelm I. Excuse me. The couple would have three children: Princess Margaret, Victoria, Charlotte, Augusta, Nora. That's a that's a refreshing name to have in the royal family, Nora. I love that name, though, by the way. Prince Arthur, Frederick, Patrick Albert, and Princess Victoria Patricia, Helena Elizabeth, who were all from the Connaught's country home. Um, and after 1900, at Clarence House, the Connaught London residence. Now, through his children's marriages, Arthur had become the father-in-law of the Crown Prince Gustav Adolf of Sweden, Princess Alexandra, Duchess of Fife, and Sir Alexander Ramsay. Arthur's first two children predeceased him. Margaret, while pregnant with her sixth grandchild for many years, and Arthur maintained a liaison with Lady Leslie, sister of Jenny Churchill, who was still a remaining devoted to his wife. Now, alongside with his military career, the Duke continued to undertake royal duties beyond and only vaguely associated with the army. He also represented the ugh, monarchy throughout the empire. On his return from posting in India, this time with his wife, he would tour Canada in 1890, stopping in major cities across the country. He also toured Canada in 1906, and in January 1903, the Duke and Duchess represented the new King Edward VII at the 1903 Delhi Durbar to celebrate the accession. On the way to India, a couple passed through Egypt with the Duke's Open. Now, in 1910, he would travel aboard the Union Castle line of Balmoral Castle to South Africa to open Parliament of the newly formed Union of South Africa. Um, Now, it was announced March 6, 1911, that King George had, by commission under the Royal Sign Manual, approved the recommendation of the British Prime Minister H. Asquith to appoint Arthur as the Governor General of Canada, the representative of the monarch. His brother-in-law John Campbell, 9th Duke of Argyll, had previously served in the country's Governor General, but when Arthur was sworn in October 13, 1911, the Salon Rouge of Parliament buildings of Quebec, He became the first Governor General who was a member of the British royal family. Now, to Canada, Arthur brought him his young wife, his youngest daughter, and to the latter of whom would become extremely popular with the Canadians. And the Governor General and his viceroyal family would travel throughout the country, performing at such constitutional and ceremonial tasks. Opening Parliament in 1911, and in 1917, he laying a newly rebuilt cinder block on Parliament Hill, in the cornerstone, was to the late King Edward VII has said. Now, while in Ottawa, he maintained a routine of 4 days each at his office in the Parliament, private receptions to members and political. In 1914, when the First World War broke out, with Canadians called to arms against Germany and Austria-Hungary, Arthur maintained a riot role in the empire. For instance, in 1912 until his death, he served as the colonel-in-chief of the Cape Town Highlanders Regiment. Now, after his years in Canada, the Duke has similar public offices but undertook a number of public engagements. In 1920, he traveled to South Africa to open the Chapman's Peak Drive. The following year, he traveled to India, where he officially spent the new Central Legislative Assembly as well. Now, Prince Arthur would die January 16, 1942, at the age of 91, at the same age as his elder sister, Princess Louise, who had died 2 years earlier and 1 month before. A funeral was held at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle on January 23rd, after which his body was placed temporarily in a royal vault beneath the chapel. He was reburied March 19, 1942, at the royal burial in Frogmore. He was the last of Queen Victoria's last surviving sons. He was sealed in London after his death in 1942. Alright, that is it for this episode. Y'all can join me next time as we talk about Prince Leopold. Y'all have a great day and a happy Thanksgiving.